Have you ever wondered what a love story between a pig and a sheep would produce? Well, look no further. The Mangalistas are the only surviving curly-haired porker in the world, and oh my goodness, aren't they just the fanciest hog you've ever seen? Curly ham, permed pork, poodle pigs, sheep pigs, Shirley Temple swine. They've been called every adorable name in the book. But there's a lot more to this fluffy forager than a perfect curl. They aren't called the Kobe beef of pork for nothing. There isn't a better quality or a more expensive cut of pork available in the world than that of the Mangalistas. If you've ever dined in a five-star restaurant and you ordered the pork, chances are it probably came from the five-star pig that takes center stage today. Let's have a look at the magnificent Mangalitsa. Most know the curly porkies as the Mangalista, but back in Hungary, where they were first bred, and most of Europe too, they're known by their original name, the Mangalica. The only other species of curly-haired pig have gone extinct, and as of right now, the Mangalistas are the only pigs around who have the ability to put Shirley Temple to shame. Back in the 1830s, a Serbian prince commissioned a new breed to be developed. He sent 10 sows and 2 boars over to Hungary to another prince's estate, where expert breeders took up the challenge of creating a fatter hog that could brave the icy elements as well as be relatively easy to care for. From Serbia came the Sumadija, and Hungary supplied the Solotna and Baconi. And just for good measure, they added the European wild boar to the mix. All of the Hungarian and Serbian breeds have died out since, or they've been crossbred to create new breeds, so the original lines that created the Mangalista don't exist anymore. Every breed brought something new to the table: hardiness, a good amount of fat, and the feral boars made them disease-resistant and fairly versatile and low-cost when it came to their feed requirements. But it's that curly Baconi that lent the final product its quaint curls. The Mangalista came out with all of the attributes that they were going for, with the added bonus that it wasn't as slow-growing as the heritage breeds tended to be. Don't get us wrong, this is not a commercial hog that grows to slaughter size in the blink of an eye, but they certainly have an edge over the old hats in the pen. Mangalistas ruled the market for a good 100 years, but like most of our heritage breeds that nearly faced extinction, the industrial era was to blame. The super pigs that were produced just smothered the old-timers out of the market, and large-scale farms flocked to procure fast-growing pigs that had the fat and the size that translated to better and faster dollar signs on the sales floor. Slowly and silently, the permed porkies started to fade away in the background until there were only 200 purebred specimens left in all of Europe, with most of them being found in Hungary. The European breeding societies started taking note of all of their heritage breeds after World War II, but the Mangalistas flew under the radar because they were still relatively popular in the 50s, and given all of the critically endangered breeds that needed their attention, there just wasn't any need to keep them in mind at the time. A Spanish company called the Monte Nevado made the dire discovery, and they reached out to Hungary, offering to at least attempt to bring the breed back. This was no simple task. Of the 200 specimens, only about half were still at a breedable age, and they were localized to just a handful of homesteads. So the gene pool wasn't quite as wide as they would have liked. Luckily, swine aren't as fussed about a little thing like inbreeding as humans are. You won't find any Habsburg jaws in these babies. Spain relied heavily on their high-quality meat to push for more interest in the breed, and they knew what they were doing. The Mangalistas have been called the Kobe beef of pork. There are few breeds that can compare to them as far as quality in product goes. They got them back to a few thousands before the 90s were even out, and Hungary awarded the Spaniards with the Middle Cross of Hungary Award for their efforts. They hung around in Europe for a few years until the American homesteaders in the 2000s came upon the breed. The new millennium, with the power of the internet and a better understanding of the less than stellar quality that factory farming brought to the table, spurned on thousands of people, groups, and organizations that leaned more toward the old, more sustainable ways of growing and rearing their food. The 1830s might sound like a long time ago for us, but in the breeding space, the Mangalistas were developed relatively late in the game, just as the fad of breeding unusual breeds started fading out of style. It wasn't until 2007 that they managed to settle their hooves on American soil. Predictably, the rather charming-looking pigs garnered the small-holding and organic farmers' attention. But it was their high-priced attributes that skyrocketed their popularity. They can now count hundreds of thousands across the world. Since we're on the topic of their good qualities, let's jump right into the stats and their temperaments. Their Serbian and Hungarian stock should be a good indicator of how well the Mangalistas handle the cold. These hogs are perfectly happy in freezing temperatures. That's not to say that they can't live in the heat. They do just fine in the hot summer, as long as they have enough shade and a good mud hole to cool off in when they need it. Pushing them down to the Nevada desert might be a little too strenuous for them to be comfortable, but it's been done before without any serious implications. Standing at a small to medium-sized breed, they come in shades of red, blonde, brown, and black, or a mixture of the colors. Their cute curls, especially on the blondes, have a habit of pulling at the heartstrings, and with their general relaxed nature, well, it's easy to see why their owners pick out favorites, or they just organically become more akin to pets than production animals. And when we say that they are relaxed, we mean it. If their conditions are ideal, the only time you'll see these hogs react to stress at all is when they are subjected to factory-setting environments. Mangalistas need space to root, dig, and bake in the sun. Unless they're breeding or feeding, they prefer to keep their distance from one another. That's not to say that they aren't social, it's just that they have limits to how closely they want to be crammed against others for long periods of time. Sows usually give off 4 to 6 live piglets in a single farrowing, and the more fertile ladies can go as high as 10. This isn't nearly as much as most pigs drop, but that's why they're so well suited for small-scale farming. Other breeds often give birth to so many piglets that it stops becoming cost-effective. They grow out to slaughter age within the year, so by the time your freezer has been emptied, the next round of piglets have grown out again, and you can fill your storages up without so much excess that you end up with more waste than you should. Piglets are born with that telltale feral stripe across their backs, a throwback to their European boar ancestry. Mothers have good instincts, and she'll definitely need to be separated from the rest when her time to farrow comes close. This is also one of the few times you'll see aggression from Mangalistas. Familiar humans shouldn't have a problem handling the piglets after they're a few days old, but she will not allow the rest of the herd near her babies for the first month. At slaughter age, you can count on a good 80 kilograms of pork, with an astounding 70% of lard on their carcasses, creating a rich, marbled cut that's second to none. There is virtually no saturated fat on them. This is all clean lard. That's why they're called the Kobe beef of pork. There really is no way to put into words just how good their product is. The high profit that you get from sales will make up for their lower farrowing numbers. For the most part, they're processed and consumed just like any other pig. It's just that they taste so much better. The meat is such a deep shade of red that it is almost indistinguishable from beef. Their ham, sausage, and smoked products are often overlooked, but they'll provide you with the best meat to work with when it comes to preserving and curing it. After 2 years of growth, their carcass value drops, and it's not advisable to slaughter them this late in the game. The meat will still be good, but the fat-to-meat ratio changes as they get older. So it's best to prep your knives once a year and clean house before the next litter grows out. For the most part, they're a relatively easy breed to care for. A pig will be a pig. They root and dig whenever they can, and if they don't have enough to keep themselves busy with, well, they will break out to seek their entertainment elsewhere, which can be a challenge to raising this breed. And speaking of entertainment, boars come in 2 flavors. Most of them act like any boar around sows in Heatwood, willing to steamroll through a house to get to their ladies. But every now and then, you get a gentleman who's so lazy that he can't be bothered to lend his services out, no matter how dolled up the girls are. It's rare, but it does happen. If you do find yourself with a boar who's disinterested that first season you set him out on a herd, don't even bother trying to convince him otherwise. He doesn't have to be good at it the first time he gets a chance to trot onto the dating scene. He just needs to be enthusiastic about it. If there's enough willingness, he'll learn how it's done without any of your help soon enough. They aren't nearly as rare as they were just 10 years ago, and their numbers keep rising every year. But their farrowing numbers are stalling their population somewhat, and the incredibly high price that their meat fetches also affects their sales, so they're still a little on the pricey side. but at the rate they're spreading, it's almost certain that their prices will continue to drop to more affordable amounts soon enough. Mangalistas aren't much different to feed from other pigs. If anything, they'll be all the more healthy, the more variation you give them. If they have pasture to work with, then your feed costs will drop significantly. They aren't a fully grazing pig, but like all swine, they'll eat anything edible in their path. Mangalistas would prefer a 50-50 ratio between pasture and pig feed to fill their bellies. They can absolutely be fed on store-bought feed alone, with fresh scraps on the side, but they'll just be a little happier if they get to seek out half of their own food. Rotational grazing is the optimal option, especially if you have a field that needs trampling and a good delivery of manure. Feeding pigs. Soybean will always have a less than desirable effect on the quality of their lard. They'll be happy to eat soybean, but if it makes up the bulk of their feed, you'll just end up with a very high-quality pork that's been completely ruined. Given their Hungarian and Serbian backgrounds, they will always be a cold, hardy hog. Those curls can come in a wide variety of thickness, but even when it's on the thinner side, those permed bristles keep in a heck of a lot of heat, more than you'd expect anyway. So if you're going to expect them to live in warmer climates, you're going to have to go out of your way to provide them with the appropriate amount of shade and plenty of water and mud holes for them to cool off in. And in the event of a heat wave, you're going to have to invest in fans. The fans, electricity and water bills can burn a hole in your pocket real quick. Mangalistas are valuable to homesteaders for their meat and their inexpensive care, and both of their prized attributes will suffer if the appropriate steps aren't taken. You'll taste the difference between a thriving animal and an unhappy one. When we say easy temperaments and medium size, take that with a grain of salt. 180 pounds of flesh and fat is no joke to handle. Even the potbelly pigs, who are some of the smallest pigs, are still not for the novice to handle. If you've kept any kind of pig before, you'll know what we're talking about. Yes, they're generally calmer than the more aggressive breeds, and they are on the easier side of temperament. But a boar in mating season or a fight over some food is enough to send any hog on a rampage. Just like you get your incredibly lazy boars, every now and then a very aggressive one comes along, so be very conscious of temperament if buying a new boar. If you have reservations about keeping Mangalistas, just visit any farm that keeps pigs and help out for a few days. Get your wellies in those pens and actually work with the animals. There's no better way to know what you can handle than actually experiencing it on the ground. Then there's space. Most of your heritage breeds will require a little more room. You don't need 1,000 acres. You can comfortably fit 30 pigs on a hectare, double that amount if you push them to their limits. For the small holdings, this won't be a problem. Half a football field for 15 at a time will be an ample amount of space, especially if you have a good butchering routine in place. They are not a factory swine at all. Cramming too many Mangalistas into one space will have disastrous outcomes. They just won't reproduce as they should, they won't pick up weight, and suddenly your low-stress pig will be a ball of strung-out energy that's just asking for a fight. And besides, their birth rates just aren't high enough to expect them to pump out the amount of babies that a large-scale farm needs, nor do they grow out at outrageous rates. They are at their happiest when they have a little room and a trough to stick their noses into. Then there's the very real problem with fleas and ticks. Pigs almost never have to deal with this pest because they have no hair. Unfortunately, the Mangalistas have ample room for these pesky bugs to hide in. A good dusting in their pens or moving them around often should keep an infestation at bay. Make a habit of handling your pigs so that you can check them over weekly for any signs of ticks and fleas. The incessant scratching will be a good indicator that you have a problem, but by then it'll be a massive infestation, so keep ahead of the problem before it gets out of hand. There are plenty of cheap and safe products out there to deal with the bloodsuckers, just don't let it get out of hand. Mangalistas are the homesteader's hog through and through, and they bring the quality that our markets have sorely needed for the past 100 years. When they're in the environments that they need, then their slightly slower growth and reasonable birth rates becomes an advantage. That annual slaughter will give you enough for your own household, they'll have enough to share with your neighbors, and their price per pound is so attractive that it'll be a very lucrative side hustle for you. For our listeners who've kept Mangalistas before, you know how much we love hearing feedback. Please let us know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with other like-minded livestock enthusiasts. And if you like this video, why not have a look at some of our other uploads on your screen right now? See you in the next one. Cheers!